So, welcome to this Cambridge Marketing College webinar. This is marketing measurement of performance that actually matters. So, my name's Neil Wilkins. I'm one of the tutors at the college, and this is really important stuff. Really, really important stuff. What we're needing to do here as a marketing discipline, as a marketing community, is move beyond the concept of what we call vanity metrics. We've all fallen into this pot. I know I have multiple times, and I'm sure you'll reflect that this is true as well. Whatever kind of organization you're involved in, is that we often spend time looking at the shiny numbers, the big numbers, and not necessarily the numbers that are actually commercially most valuable. So that's what we're going to do here is we're going to build a measurement toolkit as we go through this session that's going to help us to become more commercial with the marketing performance that we measure and that we analyze and that we get insights from so that we can support better commercial decisions. This will definitely, unquestionably raise the bar of marketing performance and certainly how marketing is seen across the organization. So this is really, really important stuff. So before we kind of get into this, I'd like you to think about any marketing metrics, and maybe there is one that particularly stands out to you that gets a lot of attention in the work that you do, probably and possibly from outside of marketing? And does it genuinely influence a better decision? Or is it just something that makes the business feel good? It just gives that false sense of security that, hey, we're on a roll here because we've got lots of followers. Okay, little spoiler alert there. I've just given you one of the possible answers. Loads of followers, loads of likes on that social media post. Often that is one that is really glaringly obvious, but you might have some other metrics that actually get a lot of attention. And actually, when you stop and think about it, they are actually just pandering to the ego of the brand or ego of the business. They're not really helping you make good decisions. So this stuff really, really matters, and it particularly matters right now. I've said about already a couple of times the idea of this kind of being something that is shared across the business. And often marketing measurement and marketing performance is rated on kind of almost like a slightly skewed perspective because we're not necessarily talking about the things that makes marketing look particularly credible. So if it is just followers, if it is just awareness, brand awareness, that phrase that's really kind of just so sort of woolly and cloudy, and you can't really kind of hang anything onto it or from it. What we're needing to do here to get credibility is to start looking at metrics, measurement, performance analysis that senior leaders, not only in marketing, but more broadly, can evidence as proving that marketing is actually giving value to the business in the activity that it does. And then obviously marketing gets credit for it. There is no way that marketing is going to be present at a senior management level if it can't do this, because it just won't be taken seriously. Finance obviously have got the financial performance of the business. HR have got about all the people. Sales are out there actually engaging with customers. Marketing has to step up. And I'm looking in the mirror as I say this because, yes, I'm part of this too. So it's not me preaching, it's me saying we all have got a part to play here. From the manager's perspective, it's about choosing measures that show the business contribution, not just activity that marketing has done. And from the marketing executive perspective, it's reporting numbers that help explain what's working, what's not working, and actually what should happen next. And what I'm going to do as I talk through these various opportunities and building this toolkit is I'm going to kind of break it down into those two. So if you're more at a management level, I'm going to give you something there. And if you're more at an executive level, you'll get something too that's a lot more tactical and practical. And the nice thing about that is you'll also see the other person's perspective. So if you're a manager, you'll see and kind of get an understanding of what the executives that potentially report into you are going to be focusing on, and vice versa. So if you're an executive, you could be looking and seeing what your manager is, being kept up at night for thinking about. So the key thing here and the key point here is that if measurement at both a managerial and executive level doesn't help a commercial decision, then it's reporting theatre, not performance management. It's just reporting what happened. It's kind of almost trying to puff its chest out and say, hey, I'm really good, but it's actually not really commercially helpful. So, by the end of this session, what we're going to focus in on is distinguishing between meaningful metrics and these vanity metrics or these ego metrics that I'm mentioning. We're going to be able to build a small defensible measurement toolkit. So, we're going to have a small number of things that we're going to take away from this session and hopefully be able to roll out pretty straightforwardly and then start to build that credibility and that decision making literally from now. We're going to connect daily activities to commercial outcomes. That one's key. That one is always, always key. If you're doing stuff that doesn't add commercial value to the broader goals, not just marketing goals, but broader goals of the organization, there's a big question mark there is why are you doing it? So we're going to look at that. We're going to use the concept of leading and lagging indicators, and I'll explain what those are, and work those together as part of this toolkit. And then we're going to figure out how we can explain priorities clearly, both to our colleagues within marketing, but also the broader stakeholders that we have. And so the key point, obviously, from all of this is that good measurement creates clarity for both the planning and the strategy and the defending of marketing's activity, as well as the execution of the campaigns and the projects that we do. So there's kind of a win-win, win-win-win going on here, which is, from my perspective, actually a really encouraging thing. So let's start where the kind of the problems and kind of, the baseline really is here. Now, the core problem really here is that we often fall into a trap. There are often too many metrics. We're trying to report too much stuff, and I'll use that word advisedly. It is stuff. There's a lot of kind of noise. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of data. And if we do too much, obviously we can't then interpret that data and those numbers into meaningful insights. And of course, it's the insights then that people can then make decisions from, and we can then continuously improve. So the data is just data, numbers are just numbers, metrics are just metrics. And if we've got too many of them, we get very much lost in that. Another trap is that channel by channel reporting doesn't have an overall view. So often we'll go deep into, hey, we're here on Instagram, for example, and oh, look over here, here's our email marketing that we're reporting. And actually, what's actually happening is that those two things aren't working together to give an overall view of what's going on. So that kind of broader insight we're never going to find it if you're very channel by channel specific. So that's one big challenge that we've got. Easy platform numbers are often treated as proof of success, the ones that give you the numbers literally on the dashboard. So a lot of the social networks do this now because they obviously want to be very easy to use. So if you're using Meta Business Suite or if you're looking at your LinkedIn insights, often those things are a lot easier to kind of be reporting on than maybe going deep into Google Analytics, which is a lot more complicated. And to create custom reports requires quite a bit of attention and focus. So often what we find is that a trap we fall into is we just start reporting the stuff that's easy to get to, and that might not be the most valuable, important stuff overall. And often, and this is the big one, this really is the big one, and come on, hands up if this is us, no clear link between activity and business impact. So we're happy to report the marketing stuff, but then we don't follow necessarily that through to, and actually, how did this impact on the business? The business broadly, not just the commercials, not just the sales, but the business broadly. Did it impact on our people? Did it impact on, the innovation? Did it impact on our processes and systems? Well, no, it's a marketing campaign. How could it? Well, of course, everything does. Everything has that knock-on effect. So, from a manager's perspective, it is about setting the commercial questions first. It's about saying, before we even look at the numbers, start to build our toolkit. Let's kind of identify what is our commercial goal? What are we actually trying to achieve here? And from the executive's focus, it's about collecting and presenting only the evidence that helps answer those questions or that question. That's key because then we're already starting to see things aligning, things lining up, which obviously is really, really important. So let's kind of anchor this session then that we're talking about here. We've identified there's a few little traps you might fall in. We've used this phrase vanity metrics. We've said that this is absolutely here and now. We've got to do this. So let's kind of just really sort of embed this right into our thinking. So the definition here, an effective metric should connect something to something that the metrics user influences. So this kind of means that basically a metric is far more useful when the person reading it can actually act on it. So if you are putting into your monthly reports or maybe your weekly bulletins or however you're doing your reporting, if you're putting stuff that nobody is going to act on, that nobody's going to take a decision on, and it is just numbers that you're reporting because you feel, well, we've always reported them like this, then there's an opportunity to improve stuff. This is where we can really, really up the game here. So, from the manager's perspective, it's about assigning ownership clearly. What metrics, what data, what information should we be gathering to evidence our marketing performance that is going to lead to some changing in behavior or some change in process or a system or the way that we do things? So there's the manager's focus. And then the executive's focus is knowing which actions your measures are supposed to trigger. So when you're measuring stuff, it's like, okay, so this little piece of data, this little metric, this little piece of insight here, that's going to then trigger that next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. So what you're doing is you're already building a credibility stack, if you like, for the things that you are deciding you're going to be measuring. So rather than just measuring it because you can, or measuring it because, well, Facebook says this is an important thing, engagement and reach. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to go in and find out and then see whether it makes my stack. Because if it doesn't, then we don't need to be measuring it. And so rather than being driven by what you can see, because those are the things you could measure, let's be driven by something that actually starts to answer questions. That's really important. And what it'll do is it will start to shape or maybe reshape a much more effective dashboard. And if we start with outcomes and then work backwards, we're going to actually start to get some really useful things. So rather than here's all the data, now what can we do with it? It's much more about here's a dashboard of things that are the outcomes we want to get. So the problems we want to solve, the opportunities we want to realize, the goals that we've set that we want to achieve. And look, here are some of the metrics that are going to actually help us to work our way towards it. So we're kind of reverse engineering. Okay, that is a phrase. You can look that one up. This is a key kind of concept of how to do this. Reverse engineering back from, or working backwards is a simple plain English term, which is the same thing, working backwards from what you're trying to achieve. So useful outcome categories could be things like revenue growth, profit contribution, market share, customer acquisition quality, retention and repeat value, pipeline contribution, brand strength over time, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so those are the reasons why we do measurement. The measurement isn't the numbers, it's these are the things and the reasons why. So these are the outcomes we're looking for. So, from the manager's perspective, you should be looking at defining the outcome that matters most this quarter or this year or maybe this month, and then thinking, okay, where are the metrics then that are going to actually show how we are progressing to achieving that outcome, not the other way around. And the executive then can support that by saying, okay, I know how my activity contributes to achieving that outcome. And that one's key as well, because then it gives that sense of value, it gives that sense of achievement, and it kind of just really gives you a sense of we've got this, we're actually in control here of providing more value than we ever used to. So here we've automatically taken out a lot of that noise that we said about earlier, where there are just too many metrics. So, but as part of this thing, you could call it a stack, you could call it a framework, or you could call it a metric hierarchy. And so a simple metric hierarchy is business outcomes, something like profit growth, commercial drivers, which lead into those outcomes, which could be higher value new customers, because that will drive profit growth. And then your marketing performance indicators sitting under that, which is, well, to get those high value new customers that will drive profit growth, we need to focus on a qualified pipeline from our target segments. So you're kind of layering, you're stacking, you're building this hierarchy from the business outcome at the top down through some of the drivers to then your marketing performance indicators, your KPIs or your marketing KPIs, so that you can see that all you're doing is you're measuring far fewer things, but these are things that will contribute to making sure that the drivers are pointing in the right direction and achieving, and then the business outcome is achieved. So that's really key here. And so what we're looking at is that these lower level metrics, they should explain and improve the higher level outcomes. So if you do find that you're going slightly off sync with achieving this outcome, you can then work down a level and say, well, actually, let's look at our commercial drivers. These higher value new customers, are we actually getting enough of them? Actually, are they as high value as we thought? Oh, not so sure. Right, go down to the level next below, the marketing performance indicators. Are we actually targeting the right people to get those higher value new customers? So what you're doing is you're going down a level, down a level, down a level to help you understand the process improvement or the targeting or maybe the new creative that you need to be able to deliver the goal. I'm hoping this is kind of making sense. This whole idea of kind of working upwards and downwards as you need to make decisions, but as you need to kind of build the real understanding of what's going on. I mean, this is quite exciting stuff when you think about it, because it means that if you need to solve an issue, so maybe you've got a campaign that's not working, for example, you can either go up to the goal, the outcome that you're looking to achieve, or you can come down a little level, or you can go right down to the bottom and actually look at the metrics that you're measuring and see whether those are actually contributing to the issue, or maybe you're just not measuring the right thing. So it's this real nice sense check that's going on. And what it does, it means that the things that you're measuring are meaningful. So you've got meaningful metrics versus these old vanity metrics that I've mentioned a number of times, and I will continue to mention because we've got to get rid of these. We've got to strike these out of the equation. When I say vanity metrics, I guess you kind of know what I'm talking about, but just a few little examples. Impressions in isolation, follower growth, raw traffic, likes without the context of why they likes. Anybody can click a button, but if they don't take action, what value was that like? None at all. Open rates without performance or behavior change beyond that. Whereas more meaningful metrics, now these again, these are going to sound, oh, these are nicer. And that's the impact you want to be seeing from these. Qualified leads, sales accepted leads, incremental revenue, conversion to opportunity, customer acquisition cost, retention and repeat purchase, pipeline velocity or speed. These are the things which we really need to be challenging ourselves with. So the manager can challenge whether a metric changes investment or strategy, and the executive can challenge whether a metric changes actions they're going to take this week. These are the key things. We can strike away those vanity metrics because, okay, they did make us feel good, but we were kind of kidding ourselves. I think we can probably see already because they weren't the value that we were seeking. It's very hard to say, oh, yes, oh, my open rate there contributed to my business outcome. Well, how on earth would that be linked? Well, intrinsically, it could be linked if you had a story then that told beyond that open rate was a behavioral change, was some engagement, was some interactivity, was a lead that was then converted, etc., etc. But in isolation, and this is where it becomes vanity, it is just a vanity metric. So we can start to strip those out by doing this reverse engineering that I'm talking about. And what you'll also see when you start to build this kind of much more meaningful metrics rather than vanity metrics, is that some of the stuff that you're going to be looking to measure and assess within your performance has already happened. So it will be lagging behind where you are today, and some of the stuff will be leading. So we've got these kind of indicators, and my recommendation would be to have a nice little balance here of leading and lagging indicators. So your lagging indicators tell you things like revenue, profit, market share, the stuff that's kind of historical. It's kind of, it might be only yesterday, but it's still behind you. The leading indicators then tell you whether you're on track as you look forward to make some improvements. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think, well, actually, balancing and actually having both would be really useful. Because if I can then base the evidence of where I'm going in the future on what I've got behind me, well, that's kind of solid foundations. That's a solid baseline. But actually, I've got some goals to now move forward with, rather than just, hey, look at our followers. Can you see how inept and how just pointless those kinds of vanity metrics are now? So, what could we actually put in then if you're looking at leading indicators? Because it's good, they're going to serve different purposes. I mean, using both will create a far more useful measurement system than just having just lagging indicators, which many businesses do. They just report on what happened last month, and then it's like, right, back to business, back to work. It's like, hold on, no, 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 you need some leading ones to then guide you into the future. And if you're just focusing on the future rather than actually looking behind you and seeing the reality of what's happened, things like, as I say, this revenue, profit, or market share, then you're trying to build something on very, very sort of soft ground, very, very difficult. So the leading ones that will tell you whether you're moving forward in the right direction could be qualified demand, share of search, maybe branded search volume, content engagement quality, etc., etc. There are going to be thousands of those. It's just a few little examples for you. And the manager's perspective here and their focus really could be, should be, is using the lagging metrics to judge success to this point. And the executive now has this great opportunity to use some leading metrics to guide day-to-day optimization as they tactically take things forward. Now, you're probably going to want to work together on this one. So if you're a manager and you've got an executive, talk to them and vice versa, because by blending these two things together and balancing them, what you're going to be getting at the end of this is a very balanced scorecard. And a balanced scorecard, and you need to look up if you're not aware of what a balanced scorecard is, it was Kaplan and Norton's concept many, many years ago of designing a balanced kind of way of joining these kind of leading and lagging things together and balancing it across more than just financial measures. Because a lot of organizations just say, just give me the numbers, just tell me how much money we've made, and can we afford to keep the lights on and pay our people? But of course, beyond that and inside that, there's a lot more going on. So, from a marketing perspective, a balanced scorecard that brings in leading indicators, lagging indicators, and these meaningful metrics might enable you to put a number of different things into the four categories of the scorecard. So, balanced scorecard always has kind of four categories: commercial, customer, performance, and learning. You can take one or two of those out. It's not rigid. But from a marketing perspective, those four tend to be the good ones if you want to put this into practice yourself. So, from a commercial perspective, imagine this as a 2 by 2 grid. There's your scorecard. Nice and balanced, because it isn't just about the numbers and the commercials. It is about what we're performing. It is about the customer ultimately, because we need them. And it's also about what we learn as well. So think in the commercial box then. It would be things like revenue, profit, pipeline, return on marketing investment. In the customer box, it could be things like the acquisition quality. Maybe over the last month, the last quarter, you can decide the timescale, the retention, the satisfaction, the trust, those customer centric, maybe slightly more subjective things. That goes in a balanced scorecard for sure. Performance, this is much more about systems and processes, conversion quality, speed, response, efficiency of channels. Again, you're balancing this off with, yeah, we did the numbers, but how did we do the numbers? And who did we do the numbers through? Our customers. And then the learning is the fourth quadrant in our balanced scorecard. And in the learning side, this is again great for both manager and executive. Testing, insight generation, improvement rate, the things that you are going to be saying, yeah, we're improving on, but we're continuously improving. And of course, a balanced scorecard that really works is probably using the red, amber, green traffic lights sort of reporting scheme, because you can put in here some of the things that are green. Hopefully most of them are green. Maybe some of them are amber. They need a little bit of attention. It's not immediate, but we need to get onto it. And then if anything flags up as red, and it can be in any of these boxes, that requires a downing of tools, and we need to get on this. And so what you're doing is you're creating this dashboard that is meaningful to the business. It's going to show the value that's coming through, not just in hitting the numbers, but in the overall performance of marketing. So marketing performance goes beyond just doing the numbers. And so from the manager's perspective, they can keep the scorecard aligned with business priorities. So as a higher level strategic thing comes in, you can then adjust, maybe take some of these indicators up or down, maybe take them out, add new ones in. So you're aligning it with business priorities. And from the executive perspective, in terms of tactical rollout and execution, it's keeping the measures current, clean, and actionable. So this thing does not gather dust. It's constantly being reworked and reused. So it's a living, managed scorecard. And this is the mindset that we all need to get into, because if we start thinking like this, and then this reverse engineering back to, well, what are the metrics I need to be able to populate this or fuel it? Then things start to make a lot of sense. And they do, don't they? It is more than just the numbers you could collect, and it's now the numbers that you really must collect. And so there are still, though, when you look at it, a lot of metrics out there to choose from. Okay, so you can still, even if you're now restricting yourself in this balanced scorecard, you can still put a whole lot of data in there, a whole lot of numbers and information. So we need some filters. So here's a little kind of 5 filter approach that might actually help you to kind of decide which metrics, could actually really help us. And so the 5 kind of check words, the 5 keywords to think of here: relevant, influenceable, understandable, actionable, and comparable. Okay, so relevant. Does it support a real business objective? Influenceable. Can the team affect it? Remember, that whole thing is you've got to be able to do something with it, whatever it is. So you need to be able to action it. Understandable. Can non-marketers grasp it? Because if you're just in your balanced scorecard for marketing, just having marketing speak, and you send this on to the management team or to the finance director or to somebody in sales, and they can't understand it because it's full of marketing stuff, then it's not going to fly. So make it understandable. The metrics you're reporting inside your balanced scorecard with your leading and lagging balanced indicators, it's got to be understandable. So choose stuff that makes sense to others too. Actionable. Will it trigger a sensible decision? Well, only you can decide, and that will take trial and error. You probably can't decide that instantly there and then, so you're probably going to have to test this out and see over time which ones stick and which ones don't. And comparable. This is where time really does come in. Can it be tracked as a metric over time or against a benchmark? So I'm going to introduce just a little thought here. If you are only reporting standalone, single one-time metrics, do they have as much impact as a trend? And I think it just takes a millisecond to say, well, obviously not. No, Neil. Now, obviously, if I can show a trend, it's much more interesting because it's a graph, it's a line, it's some kind of movement between before and after, or today and tomorrow, or here and yesterday. A trend is everything. So the comparable metrics are the ones that can be tracked over time. And so you can establish trends. And again, the trends will come through in your scorecard, they'll come through in your conversation. And when you're prioritizing what you are going to do next, and again, that's the executive focus, is the operationalizing of the metrics. It's actually making sure they are usable on a day-to-day basis. The trends are going to be your friend. Snapshot, little moments in time don't really tell you whether that number's on the increase or the decline, whether it's actually good against a benchmark or not. So you need comparison. And so that's what I'm saying here. Look at benchmarks to set the baseline, and then look at trends to show performance over time. Absolutely key in really effective marketing measurement. And so our toolkit is really starting to build here, isn't it? If you think about this, a strong core toolkit for most marketing teams then is going to have a mixture of the things that we've been talking about. It's going to have some stuff about business outcomes. It's going to have some what we might call commercial bridge metrics. So these are probably going to bridge between marketing and sales focus, those kinds of things. It's going to have some predictive or leading indicators, and it's going to have some diagnostic metrics, the stuff that's kind of probably a little bit behind the scenes, process related, but it's all about balance. This is really key, and I can't really emphasize this more. It is about continuously improving the metrics that you've got. Of course, getting the numbers better. They need to all be pointing forward. Of course they do. But it's about kind of playing with them. It's about using them not only in your planning, but also in your day-to-day decision making. Because if you're starting to build this into your daily habits, if you're starting to become a little bit more passionate than possibly you are now about data and performance measurement, then what it does does, it starts to refine the work you do. You start to do less of the stuff that's not impactful, and you start to do more of actually what matters. And so, in theory, and of course, with a little bit of help from AI, you might be able to actually strip back a lot of the noise, the chaos, and the unimportant stuff that's kind of bogged you down to get to this point. So, there's a real upside actually if you do embrace this. And it does apply across wherever you're sitting, in the sector that you're in right now, in sectors that you might want to visit and work in the future. There's a lot of kind of, difference and little nuances, but the principles are all the same. The focus on what you're going to be doing is going to be subtly different because it's a different sector. But what the process is showing is that the hierarchy, the habits, the leading and lagging, the balanced scorecard, the decision making is going to be very, very similar. And so this is a really kind of interesting way then that we can start to get all of our kind of act in order, which is the key here. This is what we're trying to do really, is get our kind of, business in order first before we start to then take things out to the wider business. But when we feel ready to have those kinds of conversations, what we're looking to do then is to really start to talk the language of the rest of the business, because measuring marketing performance is great internally within marketing, but the real value comes from what I said right at the outset here today, is the fact that if we can talk the language of the rest of the business and give them stuff they can understand to help them make decisions about the value that we're bringing, and to help them in their role, because let's face it, we are the voice of the customer. We do have a lot of impact potentially and influence across the organization. If we can get this right, then it's time to focus on proper presenting of the marketing performance to the business. And this will tend to be, and this is going to probably surprise you, a very simple narrative. This is not about marketing using complicated science and marketing speak to sound or want to sound clever and big and all important. It is the absolute opposite. The more simple you can get, the more effective you're going to be when you present your stuff and your marketing performance to the business. And the fundamental reason is, and I can promise you, having spent 40 years in marketing, I have seen this and continue to see it to this day, time and time and time again. Nobody outside of marketing understands marketing. There you go. I've said it. It is the truth. So you need to say this most simple narrative and story about what happened, why it matters to the business and to them, what likely caused it based on the evidence that you've collected and the metrics and the performance you've got, and then what we recommend next. So do not just be reporting with hindsight, look at our website, isn't it beautiful? And look, we've got all these number of people coming to the front door, and some of them read our blogs. Well, yeah, and the person in the business is going to be thinking, but you tell them what happened, that's what happened, and why it matters is this, and what likely caused it was that, and what we recommend as the next best step for the business, and of course for marketing, is this. And it avoids dumping dashboards into meetings. It translates marketing metrics into commercial language that they can understand. It explains the relationship between the leading indicators and the outcomes because you're giving evidence. And it shows where confidence is high and where uncertainty remains. And it does, and it will. And so by merely reporting activity, Gartner has done a lot of research on this one, you will not be proving and evidencing marketing's contribution. What we need to be doing is showing that contribution to achieving business outcomes and speaking in the language of the audience we're talking to. So if we're talking to the board, we're talking a little bit to HR, a little bit to sales, a little bit to operations, a little bit to the chief exec, a little bit to human resources, whoever it is, whoever you've got in your board. And if we're talking to maybe the finance team and we're looking to secure some budget here, you don't talk marketing, you talk finance from a business perspective. And so what we're doing is we're reinventing and re-storytelling what we are doing consistently, practically. But the key word here, and I promise you this will be a game changer if you try this, is a simple narrative. It's a simple story because I will say it again, nobody outside of marketing understands what marketing does. Okay. So that will work. I will guarantee it. And what we're doing is we're trying to set up what you might call a practical rhythm. So we're trying to set up something here that, maybe over time is going to get us into the big quarterly strategic meetings. Maybe on a month by month basis, we are going to be able to provide our dashboard and some storytelling around it. And maybe weekly, we're going to start to be invited to other team meetings. We certainly are going to get much more of a control over our own weekly, monthly, and quarterly updates and planning sessions. So, if you are part of a team, or maybe it's just one or two of you and you need to just meet together, this is the kind of practical rhythm that I would be recommending you trying to set up. So, you've got your dashboard, you've got your leading and lagging, you've got your key performance indicators, you know your business outcomes you're trying to achieve, you set your marketing outcomes to then point towards those. And so the manager can then own the rhythm and the flow of this marketing performance, gathering of information, assessment and analysis to create those insights. And the executive inside that rhythm can ensure they keep the data accurate and the storytelling clear. So you can work together at both levels. And if you've got a chief marketing officer, maybe you are a CMO and you're listening to this. It's about setting your team up to create this rhythm so people know their role in delivering this rhythm. So you are the conductor of the orchestra and you've got your orchestra there. They're playing this incredible symphony. They're all pointing in the same direction, playing the right notes at the right time. It sounds a bit cliche, but that is actually what we're trying to create here. And if it's just you and another, or maybe it's you, maybe it is just you that has to do this. It's about getting into this practical rhythm, collection, analysis, and reporting back in a language that everybody can understand. So we're bringing this now up to the kind of almost the crescendo here. This is kind of what we can now do next. So what I would suggest are these 5 steps. I'd suggest that step 1 is write the top business outcome your marketing must support. So begin with that one. That is really the key, obvious kind of sort of guideline. That's setting the sat nav, isn't it? Step 2 is choose 2 or 3 bridge metrics that can connect marketing to that outcome. You need to think about it. You might need to press pause and rewind and go back and listen to what we've said before. But it's choosing those metrics that align your marketing to the business outcome that you're aiming for. Step 3, then choose 2 or 3 leading indicators to give that early warning of how you're progressing towards those metrics. And step 4, choose only the diagnostics needed to improve execution. It's obvious now, isn't it, that we don't need to worry about measuring everything else because we're focused here on this very business-centric approach. That's so much more powerful. And then step 5, remove the metrics that look nice but change nothing. And to be honest, once you retrain yourself and you retrain others around you, and then you start to retrain the rest of the business will start to understand very quickly when they lose those vanity metrics why marketing is actually adding some value because of these practical 5 steps. If you didn't do this before, you will see a fundamental change. You really, really will. And if you've kind of only ever yourself thought about those vanity metrics, it's no wonder you undersold what marketing is capable of. But doing it this way enables you to be kind of creating a reporting pack that you can actually then send around the organization or be presenting in the meetings with confidence. So again, quick little reflection here is which metric actually is jumping into your mind that is in your current reporting pack that you should retire first. Go on, push that one out. And don't ever talk about that one again because it doesn't really help you achieve that business outcome, does it? Really, honestly, if you're being truthful. So that one can go. And then see if there are others. There will undoubtedly be others. I'm still myself, even with clients now, starting to really try harder and harder and harder to get away from the obvious ones that kind of just shout at you day in, day out. I'm important. And we now know they're not. So, the key takeaways when you're measuring marketing performance that actually matters are that the best marketing metrics are not the most available, the most obvious, the most digital, or the most flattering. They really aren't. This is not about ego. They're the ones that help the business make better decisions. That's the habit to build. So for managers, that means creating a clear measurement hierarchy or architecture. And for executives who are going to be rolling this stuff out, that means maintaining disciplined, useful, and really action-oriented reporting. And for both of you and both of us and me and you and everyone else who works in marketing, it means focusing fundamentally on a small set of connected metrics that drive commercial judgment rather than dashboard clutter. And that's it. That is all it takes is a mindset shift. It's a hierarchy. It's thinking forward, it's thinking backwards. But those business outcomes supported by your marketing goals, supported by some really strong activity with the right kind of metrics that is aligned with all of those things. That is the way that you actually then can show and give evidence to everyone around you that marketing actually is performing and that it actually really does matter.